So let's move on. Let's talk about our one big thing today. And I told you what we were going to talk about here at the beginning of this Monday. The Trump administration with Health and Human Service Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. alongside him said, hey, maybe Tylenol is the cause for autism. Now, I don't think any of us believe them. So let us bring in an actual medical doctor here. Dr. Tim Peck is theoretically with us.
He's trying to be with us.
So we're going to try and bring him back here in a second. But anyway, so let's talk about this. So, there he is. There's Dr. Tim. Welcome.
How are you?
Welcome. Thanks for being here. Glad to have another voice in this conversation that knows a hell of a lot more about this than I do, and seemingly a hell of a lot more about this than the president or his HHS secretary do. So let's start. And Jennifer, I want to ask you to start because I think you're kind of our resident expert on this. What exactly is autism?
Autism, I think, well, I can't exactly answer that whole question, but if you're getting to the whole Tylenol part or where it comes from my experience, I will tell you it is hereditary, it is in your DNA, and it has gone back, I don't know, through time. Autism for me very much is just how I relate to the world and how the environment really affects me. And trying to fit into that world can be very challenging because people on the spectrum very much see things differently. We process things differently. I have just learned, I have only known for a year. I've only suspected for 13 months that I'm autistic, and I got the diagnosis in November last year. And just so many things clicked for me. And I'm a board certified behavior analyst, and things just kind of clicked even more, so much more understanding of that. But I can trace it in my own family line. I can see it for many people. Once they are diagnosed, it's like a domino effect. Like I can see it in my family, in extended family, people that have married into my family for generations and generations. And that is not something that you can tie to any immunization, any type of thing that we might be putting in our body.
Yeah, I'm going to just, for getting it on the record here, I want to give this definition. This is from the Cleveland Clinic. So autistic people are neurodivergent, and that means, that word describes people whose brains are different from what's expected. So if your child is neurodivergent, they may excel more in certain areas and need more support in others compared to their neurotypical peers. Autism is a spectrum. Autistic kids and adults have a wide range of personality traits, strengths, and challenges. This means there's no one-size-fits-all approach to support. Providers tailor support to your child's unique needs and preferences. Finally, it says autism is often misunderstood. Myths about it go back decades, and these have harmed autistic people. We can't erase this history, the clinic says, but we've learned from it. Today's therapies help autistic kids gain skills without forcing them to fit into a certain mold. I think we talked about this a little bit before we went live. With Kennedy, when he talks about, I'm going to pull up a quote from him from much earlier this year. He said, autism destroys families and is an individual tragedy as well. He said, many autistic children were fully functional and regressed into autism when they were 2 years old. And these kids, he said, this is the quote, it says, never pay taxes. They will never hold a job, never play baseball. They'll never write a poem, never go out. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted. He thinks all autism is severe autism, which is like 10% of the cases. Right, Dr. Mike, I saw your hand.
Yeah, and this is very personal for me because my stepson, who is 29 years old, is autistic, and he is incredible. If you want to know anything about The Wizard of Oz, the movie, he knows everything. Everything. He can tell you everything.
The original.
Yes, the original. Everything about that. everything about every Batman movie. He knows the whole spectrum of the Jaws movies, who produced them, everything. And he's 29 years old. He graduated from Purdue University without any assistance with a 3.0 in theater. He's been working full-time ever since then. So this hold a job business, come on. He just bought his own home. Let's talk autism. Let's talk about
the job.
That these are not
taxes
weird people. They are normal, great people. And I know as a principal, I had a tremendous staff, wonderful staff in elementary school. And we started getting more and more autistic children. I asked one of the directors at this district level, and they said, well, people are moving into your district because of how you work with autistic kids. And I said, I have teachers that love kids. And it doesn't matter who they are or what they've diagnosed or what they have, they love kids. And it worked. It really did work.
I
Well, it's cool.
I want to jump in here before you probably end up throwing on Dr. Tim Peck, but just having worked with people with autism from all walks of life, all different abilities, it is important that we definitely recognize that there is such a spectrum and that there are many other cognitive issues, medical issues that affect people with autism. I mean, I have a string of health issues, but, I'm able to somewhat manage them now. I know that's going to get worse as I get older, but, I have worked with kids that, we often do forget that even though you say it's a small percentage of people with severe autism, they are very much a group of people that needs a lot of support and a lot of understanding. And it is unfortunate that even within the disability community, we very much discriminate against each other. And all of this still is just another way to divide, a population of people that is already very much marginalized. So okay, that's
And Leslie, you have a child with autism, yeah?
Yes, my son has Down syndrome. He had a stroke at birth, and he has autism. And what I would like to say is, so he is maybe more on the lower functioning spectrum, but the thing that upsets me the most about this is it's quacks, people who've never taken a science class in their life, right? Trying to get break the trust between people and their doctors, right? The demise of expertise. How also, though, as going through a pregnancy is not easy. I've gone through two, I've had one miscarriage. It's not easy. And we do not need to stress pregnant mothers out at all. It's not good for the mother, for the developing fetus. It's not good for society. And it is ridiculous to have these people try to guilt people. After my son was born, I sat there for a long time and thought, what did I do? Did I somehow cause his Down syndrome by not having enough vitamin D, or by doing this or by doing that? It's not productive. It doesn't help. It just makes you feel terrible. And what you need to do is work on accepting your child as they are, and work to make the world a better place, to get more services, which I ended up doing. I worked, as an activist and make, groups for children. And I'm still doing that as I work with children with severe disabilities in the school self in Valparaiso. And so I do see children with autism that are on the severe end of the spectrum, but we need acceptance. We need love. We don't need quackery, and also having a fever when you're pregnant can be very detrimental to a fetus and can cause all kinds of issues. And if Tylenol helps bring down a dangerous fetus, and I'm looking forward to hearing Dr. Tim Peck speak about this, that is what we need. We need experts calming women and helping bring about a healthy society, healthy babies, a healthy environment, not fear mongering, just to try to, because we know RFK Jr. has made money from suing vaccine makers, and it's a grift. It is not science. It is not true. It's not life. So anyway, that's what I have to say.
Yeah. Thanks, Leslie. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because you mentioned like feeling guilt potentially. Like, did I do this? And like that's what they used to blame autism on, right?
Yeah.
I've pulled an article here about, you know, like what families are saying in
Cold mothering.
response to this annoyance.
Refrigerator mom.
Yeah, yes, that is exactly what I got pulled up. Refrigerator mothers, because they were cold and they didn't love their children enough, and apparently that was the cause of autism. Dr. Tim, from a medical
Yes.
standpoint, what do we actually know about autism? Like, what is the cause of it, if there is one?
Yeah, so the conversation today is about autism. It's also about Tylenol, which is much broader than autism, right? Autism affects a certain amount of population. Tylenol is used by hundreds of millions of people a year. And so there's two different kind of medical sides to talk about here. Because when the president spoke about this issue of Tylenol, there were some 20, I think there was 17 clips of him saying, don't take Tylenol. And most people are consuming that as don't take Tylenol over. That's what they see. Not don't take Tylenol if you're pregnant. Don't take Tylenol for, you know, related to vaccines. Don't take Tylenol for this and that. And so this issue is very broad. As we talk about autism, this is both a deep and a broad issue unto itself. In terms of causes, it's multi-genetic. It's a spectrum disease, as Jennifer called it. Important from the medical side and the spectrum and what a spectrum disease is. We hear the word spectrum disorder used for autism often to talk about people who are right on the spectrum in terms of their, usually where that comes from is around their communication skills, where on the communication spectrum they are. Spectrum diseases exist all throughout medicine. We have them everywhere. We have them through autoimmune diseases like lupus. These are spectrum diseases where we don't even quite have the right way of diagnosing it. So we say if they have 6 of these 12 different things, then we're going to call it lupus, right? And we're going to treat it in such a way, because it's not. Cancer is a spectrum disease. We can't just say lung cancer. There are 50 different lung cancers, and within each lung cancer, there are multiple different genetic abnormalities that cause that cancer. It is a spectrum disease. So when we talk about autism, the spectrum means that there are multiple different ways of landing on having this disease, most of which are going to be genetic. But just like anything, there are also going to be environmental factors that will lead to the triggering of this disease or not. And we don't have the answers of what that is or isn't. And I wish we did. And we need to have intelligent, non-political research to be able to figure out what the causes are so that we could go ahead and help families.
Let me ask you about a couple things. So one of the big claims or, you know, contentions from Kennedy is that autism rates have like skyrocketed over the last several decades. Now, I'm gonna quote Trump, and he's wrong here. He says, since 2000, autism rates have surged by much more than 400%. He said the rate used to be 1 in 20,000, then 1 in 10,000, and now it's 1 in 31. The facts on that, and this is from the Associated Press, is that, you know, autism rates have ballooned, but his numbers are off. So, you know, it was 1 in 10,000 back in the 90s. In 2000, the CDC says it was more like 1 in 150. Then 2018, it's 1 in 44. And then apparently by 2022, it's 1 in 31. Now, what explains the increased diagnosis of autism?
We have one thing that we know explains most of it, but then there's the other piece of that might explain a little bit more of it, which we should talk about, which is really where the misinformation comes. The thing that we know explains most of it is that the characterization of the disease has allowed us to have more experts, more people become experts that aren't only just autism experts, including in the education world, to be able to see people who need help because of their where they are on the autism spectrum and get them to the place where they need help and therefore get a diagnosis. So this is a case of the same incidence of the disease in society, but now just being recognized and diagnosed. And we see this in a lot of diseases that happen as we find out more about it, as we have resources that actually can help it, and as we have a society that can actually accept, help, use the word neurodivergent. That wasn't a word that we used, right, 20 years ago. You have these words to say, okay, we accept you within our society. We start to diagnose things more. And so it's more around having people be recognized for their disease rather than actually having more people have the disease. Now, before I continue, let me just say is this other small part. It can't be measured that well, right? That's a really great way to say, how do I know exactly how many people in 1960 had this disease or not, or 1980 disease or had or not, right? So that absolutely, what I just talked about, accounts for a huge increase. Is it the whole increase? I can't tell you that or not. And I'm a doctor, a scientist, someone who says I can't tell you that specifically or not, right? Because we don't have the full research to tell you.
So like, as I understand it, is like maybe these other numbers, this 1 in 20,000, this 1 in 10,000, they were categorizing this, what we say is severe autism. Now that's autism, and then the other people, they didn't realize, oh, this is a kind of autism too. Like, there were always people who were neurodivergent, and now we understand it better. Like,
Yeah.
Jennifer, for example, you're a grown-ass woman. You just found out you're autistic last year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I seriously had no idea at all. And I have worked my entire career with people with disabilities. And I have family with disabilities. Yeah. But I will tell you that we haven't really talked a lot about some of those populations, but I come from Mormon ancestry. And they are one of those populations that did have a lot of inbreeding. And there's other populations like that have that they actually study. Utah has a huge study about people with autism, a whole database of people, and they're very much interconnected. And I very much believe that is where mine came from.
What are you saying? It's like autism is potentially caused by inbreeding, or like, hey, if there's some autism in the community, then it's just going to get multiplied by it. Okay.
In the gene pool, and then people on the spectrum are neurodivergent people are very much attracted to other people that are neurodivergent, often because we get along better. It doesn't necessarily mean that the communication is always better, because it is still very much a struggle, but just keeping it in that gene pool.
And I just want to say, it looks like Leslie, you want to say something. I just want to correct something that you said, Aaron, before you do, and then I'll kick it over to you, Leslie.
Yeah, I don't have a medical degree. These are just my
No. So with Scott, what we were saying is, yes, we identified more people like Jennifer, and children, especially now, who need help, and we have this way of helping in school for children. But there's also, Leslie's son, as you described him, probably wouldn't have been diagnosed with autism either,
right?
20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And so the very severe cases that have to do with severity because there are other issues going on, in this case, what sounds like a stroke early in life, or intrautero, and so, or in utero, or someone who has Downs, or etc. You're not going to diagnose that as autism before. You're going to focus on the thing that you can see.
Right. And what I wanted to say was, years ago, they used to say people died of consumption, and now it's called tuberculosis. Mm-hmm. So, right. So years ago, they didn't have the term autism, so they didn't diagnose people with autism. And also, hundreds of years ago, 1 out of 10 children died before the age of 10. So there may have been a lot of children who had, additional medical diagnosis who didn't make it to adulthood. So there weren't enough people to study, because, for instance, Down syndrome didn't even get the term until I think the late 1800s. In England, there was a Dr. Downs, who was at an institution, because that's where they used to put people like, my son. And he noticed there were 3 people and they all were sort of the same. And he said, hey, these people have something in common. And so it's as there's more medical knowledge and there's more people to study and more people survive into adulthood and all these things, then we have these new terms. So
Was he on the spectrum?
Pardon?
Do you know if that doctor was on the spectrum?
I don't know.
I'm just curious with the 3 and the pattern recognition.
Well, they had Down syndrome. So
No, I know, but recognizing those patterns in people and those differences,
Well, a lot of them have the same facial structure. They have the similar
I know.
eyes, and there's like 50 markers, physical markers for Down syndrome. But if most people with Down syndrome didn't survive to adulthood, and it maybe like my son, he could have died as an infant like 100 years ago because he wasn't feeding any. It's just like a complicated thing. He would throw up when he ate and all these things. So if you had a baby that died within, say, 10 days, you might not even think that there was anything different about them. You just said failure to thrive, or they would have just said failure to thrive. So I think that some people, these are more complicated, nuanced conversations, and people just want something black and white. Oh, there's more autism now. Why? What's the reason? Maybe there always was this amount of autism. We just didn't know.
And then
oh, go ahead.
Well, no, I wanted to bring in something Jennifer said there, because you talked about the pattern recognition, and one of the things I've seen in response to this is evidence that autistic people, neurodivergent people, have always been around, as they point to people who were like scientists or mathematicians and in hundreds of years ago, who were like really hyper focused on like one thing, and now we might be like, oh yeah, this person's a little bit autistic, but back then it's like, you're a savant,
There is a lot to that pattern recognition, and it can also, I have to be very careful about that though, but there are a lot of people, and I will sometimes hear just certain words or phrases people say, and then I start kind of wondering about that. But I do want to throw something in here that we haven't talked about, and that is the social part of this. And that is also why we're seeing a lot more people, and we haven't seen a lot of people before, or maybe before, because one, a lot of things are just done on men, and males have been the poster child for autism. We look at that through a male lens, but also just the role of women in society, and how we just play so many different roles. We learn from a very, very early age, probably in elementary school, to mask. Women, we can be very independent, but that's not typically how you look at things. So men can kind of get by with being rough and just kind of doing weird things. But women are very much ostracized, and we very much have to learn early on that we, in order for survival, especially, when you're younger, that you have to mask. And it's very much an unconscious thing. Like I said, I had no idea. And as I've gone through the last year, I'm able to pull back a lot of layers and see a lot of reasons. But even men in my life, and men that I know that are on the spectrum, it has been a lot harder even for diagnosing them in some ways too, because of some of the masking. It just looks more like how men might present. So, but that is a huge issue with women, and then medical issues on top of that. There are so many medical issues related to being on the spectrum.
Can I pry at that a little bit more? Because does it manifest itself differently in women and men, or is that part of the way we're raised socially, the way men maybe aren't taught to name their emotions or explore those? Is that part of this?
I think that women are often taught to display their emotions and show them, and we mask way, I think, harder than men. So everything in life can be a combination of genetics and your environment. And this,
like you actually know your emotions and know you need to mask them, because men, we're just like,
don't. But that is one of the things. That is one of the things, though, that is challenging. And maybe Tim might be able to talk about this a lot more, because I'm not as into it. But there is something called alexithymia, and that is really not being able, like, understanding your emotions, being able to process them in the moment. I definitely have that. I have definitely been in some really bad situations, especially recently, where I don't think a lot of people could stood there, but it's almost kind of like having this like shield on around you, and it really helps you in that moment. But the drawback is that it can take a very long time. It can take days, hours, even longer to process that moment. So
Yeah, I have to
that
work on this shit with my therapist. That's why I asked. You know,
Absolutely.
Tim, what do you
So,
what do you think?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I wanted to get back onto something you also said about some of the comments that Trump said and RFK around, I believe is when you were doing your RFK voice around at about 2 years old, they had all these people that didn't have autism and now do.
The vaccine
And
angle, yeah.
right, that's the vaccine angle. But what is that? Why is that? Well, it's at about 2 years old where you start to really develop your psychosocial abilities and your social interaction abilities, and where you start to differentiate and be able to see how someone might not be communicating in a way that your younger child, who you had before, was communicating at that time. And so before that, there are definitely signals, there are definitely things to help diagnose, but it's at about 2 where you're able to tease it out.
So yeah, all pre-2-year-olds generally don't, they're not communicating at an advanced level, and once you should be sort of is when you start to notice these things. But then also that corresponds with about time people are getting their like normal vaccine schedule, and so that's why I think a lot of folks conflate the two.
And so we see all the time mothers, fathers who are devastated, and you have to feel for them and you have to meet them where they are. That they say vaccines cause my son, my daughter's autism, right? And what they're seeing is, okay, they got all these bunch of vaccines, and then all of a sudden it got to that time of life where I noticed that they had autism or they got diagnosed with it. And it's a temporal relationship, not a causative relationship. And so this idea of what is associated and what is causation is something that is very hard to understand when you have an N of 1, when you have a population of 1, when it's you and your child. And you have to empathize with that, because that is an extremely hard thing to go through, to see that. And we see that in 1,000 different ways of, I took Tylenol and now and I got diarrhea from it, right? I shouldn't I'm not going to take Tylenol anymore. You hear stuff like that all the time, right? But you're like, no, you didn't, have a belly pain because of your Tylenol. You just happened to get belly pain that day. Yeah. You ate something bad. Mhm.
I wanted to point something out about what he's talking about with younger kids around too. That even if you see things so a couple of my children that I very much suspect are on the spectrum, and one that has confirmed that, I remember things when they were like 2 or 3. I remember behavior changing. I remember with one of my children, they were into something and like trying to correct them and move them away from that. And like they understood me, but it was like there was something in them like that was making him still do that, or her still do that. And it was quite interesting. It stuck in my head. And I remember with another child right around 2, 3, she just completely changed from the sweetest girl. She got kicked out of daycare, and we went a long time trying to figure out what was going on. And there's just other things too with like hearing and vision with my kids, things that I picked up on as a parent throughout the years, and had sought medical care, and none of us still ever had any kind of suspicion that we were on the spectrum at all.
Right. And I do want to point out, like Dr. Tim was saying, this is not causal. This is just temporal. These are the kind of things that happen at the same time. And any link between vaccines and autism has pretty well been debunked at this point. There was a study in 1998 in the UK, Dr. David Wakefield. Yeah. And he's been completely discredited at this point. The article had to be retracted by the journal. And yet that sticks with a lot of people now, and that myth persists.
Well, we need to spend more time on making. Huh? I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
I'm sorry. I keep interrupting. I'm on a delay.
Well, I was going to ask about the Tylenol angle, right? So, look, we know vaccines do not cause autism. Period. What is with this Tylenol angle?
Yeah. So first of all, politicians don't belong in my exam room, and businesses don't belong in my exam room. Lawyers don't belong in my exam room. The only people in my exam room when medical decisions are being made are myself, the scientific community that I lean on, and the patient, and what their individual preferences are, what their lifestyle needs are, what their health needs are. Those are the people involved. And so Trump inserting himself into this conversation, especially because he can't even pronounce the word acetaminophen, which is one of the most common drugs that we have in our armamentarium to help people, is just completely inappropriate. It is way overstepping what a politician should be doing. And the medical community has pushed back hard on this. And it has been something that I've been waiting for the medical community to really step up hard to start pushing back against RFK and Trump. And we've seen a little bit of it over the last few months with vaccines, and especially this mRNA vaccine defunding that happened.
Mhm.
But now this has just been a bright, red line that has been stepped
Yeah.
over. And the American Medical Association made it very clear that they're pushing back. My medical association, ACEP, the American College of Emergency Physicians, ACOG, everybody, literally just very loudly saying, "Nope, get the hell out of my room." Yep.
So let me ask about that. That's great that those independent organizations are pushing back, but the federal government issuing guidelines does come with a certain bit of cachet. Um, do you fear, as I do, that any information that comes out of this administration is worthless at this point?
I don't know about any information, but what I would, yeah, I mean, even a clock is right twice a day. So let's talk about how we got here for a second. Okay, so to answer that question, there's been a systematic stripping of the scientific and medical influence within the FDA, the CDC, National Institutes of Health, and CMS, which is where Medicare and Medicaid and the Innovation Center is. And I would like to touch on that specifically for a moment, in a moment, because that is the part that is less in the conscious of the public. They think about medicine around CDC and FDA more than anything.
Yeah.
And so people have been removed, scientists have been removed, representatives from the AMA have been removed, doctors have been removed. The CDC's chief medical officer, someone I know, just stepped down because of the firing of their director. These people who had influence. And then specifically, this has been done around vaccines. And so the panel that says what vaccines should be given, what the schedule, etc., people have been fired and replaced, and sycophants of Trump and RFK have been put into place. The most important one for me was that the people, the committee of scientists and doctors and experts who say what should be covered and paid for by Medicare or not has been fired and replaced. And so what that's done is we just recently seen that said we're not going to pay for vaccines for the COVID vaccine for people under 65, right? We're just not going to do it. And we're not going to pay for it. What that does is strips the market for that vaccine away. And if there's no market, who's going to make it? And then what will happen? The price of it will skyrocket. And the only people that will be able to get it are the wealthy once again. And so that is the most subversive thing that's happened in this whole system. And that's where we've gotten. And because of all that removal of scientific pushback within these organizations, we've gotten to a point that Trump can get on stage and talk about Tylenol and there's no one there to stop him.
Yeah, well, a couple things there actually, and thanks for bringing this up. The Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services is now run by Dr. Oz, and Dr. Oz is an investor in I. I would pronounce it iHerb, but it's iHerb with an H, a California supplement retailer that sells folinic acid, the supplement found in leucovorin, which is a compound that they are now saying may be used to treat autism in certain cases. Now, it's unclear how much of the shares Oz still owns. He said he would divest his holdings in this company within 90 days of being confirmed, but then in another disclosure, he indicated that he might keep some until the company goes public. It sounds like, right, like we were talking about at the beginning of the show with IEDC, it sounds like a conflict of interest where he stands to potentially profit from this. Likewise, I mean, what's to stop anybody in the Trump administration from investing in like Advil before they all go out and like shit on Tylenol? You know, I mean, we've seen them engage in insider trading in this administration before.
Mhm.
It boggles the mind.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting into a big can of worms there about insider trading, which is completely legal for congressional people, which is completely illegal for in many ways for the executive branch, and even for the Supreme Court if they really wanted to, they just have to disclose it. Doesn't mean that they can't do it. And so those are laws that need to be changed immediately, and that has a lot to do with just election reform in general, and once you get into Congress, what you're able to do and what you're not.
So we've only got a
Correction.
couple minutes left here. I want to
Yeah.
make sure that all of you who are far more knowledgeable on this topic than I have a chance to say some closing words on this topic. I'm gonna come to you, Leslie, because I haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah, for me, it's stop terrorizing women, really. I mean, I think that's what a lot of it is. And support families who have children with special needs. Value people with special needs, stop stigmatizing them. Like Jennifer said, there are many amazing people with autism who are highly functional, who have jobs and families of their own, and throughout history have made important contributions. But even though my son is nonverbal and, he has right hemiplegia as the result of his stroke, he's still a pretty happy guy. And, I was just sitting on the sofa with him before we started, and, he was just smiling at me. And I was talking to my husband just about what a joy it is. We have to find the joy where we have it. And in a caring, kind country, families who have children with special needs would be getting the support they need. It wouldn't be like the Hunger Games where we're all fighting for help from the government. The government would be automatically giving that help. It wouldn't be trying to make people feel guilty and terrible about what's going on in their lives. And I don't think that all this chaos is going to elevate the birth rate. These same people seem to be so obsessed with the birth rate in the country. I mean, who wants to have a baby if they're going to, just be hating on everybody and every policy? I mean, enough is enough. We all need to stand together. I'm so glad that the medical community is standing up. I really am. There's full of brilliant people who have financial resources, who have skills beyond medicine, and they need to stand together. I mean, we all need to stand together because, they just keep turning us all into targets, and it is ridiculous. It's just not where we need to be in 2025. No.
Seriously,
do-
Jennifer. Yeah, what do you got?
I just want to add, as we're talking about this, and as you are mentioning, there's a lot of people that, really excel in medicine, just different things. And that people with autism, they need to be really careful about how they allow other people to use them, especially with leaders and people that are trying to argue either side of this, that we can be very much taken advantage of. We really think that people have our best interests at heart. And I know personally this has happened to me. So that is just something, as we talk about this more and more people are realizing that they are autistic, they probably have a lot of similar stories.
Yeah. Dr. Tim, what did I miss?
I took an oath, and my oath was to protect patients and do right by patients and leave out all of the noise of politics when taking care of them. So I just want to talk to people as patients for a second, and your listeners, Scott, which is Tylenol is incredibly important drug to what we do in medicine. It's an important drug for pregnant women, especially because you can't take ibuprofen or Advil, one and the same, Motrin, also the same, or any medication related to those drugs like Aleve. You cannot take those in pregnancy. And I need to say that because already have seen patients come in who say, why don't I just take Tylenol? Tylenol, excuse me, why don't I just take ibuprofen if I can't take Tylenol? If I, let me just use the alternative. Ibuprofen causes low amniotic fluid, which causes things like lungs to not develop in the fetus, as well as gastroschisis, which is when the stomach and intestines come out of the abdominal wall and twist around and kill. It causes kidney failure in fetuses. It blocks the prostaglandins that are needed to maintain a pregnancy in your body. It causes cleft palates, heart defects, etc. Do not take ibuprofen. And it's one of these moments of like, oh my God, I'd like have to go back. I have to prove myself when I say don't take ibuprofen to a patient instead of ibuprofen is really bad for you as a pregnant person. Please take Tylenol. Now, when it comes to Tylenol, don't take a lot of it. Let me also say that to people who are indignant against Trump, right, in various ways. I've also seen people like, it's candy. Let me take
more to piss him off.
Exactly. It's not that bad. I can take as much as I want. And you see people not knowing that there's dangers to Tylenol when it comes to overdose. And there are both chronic overdose as well as acute overdose. So you can't take more than 4 grams or 4,000 milligrams of Tylenol a day. Do not do that. That brings it to a place where you're now starting to put your liver in danger. Don't take more than 2 grams, which is 2,000 milligrams. 4 500 milligram pills. Usually they're in 500s or 650s. Don't take more than 4 of those a day, over 2 grams on a chronic basis if you have chronic pain, because you will put your liver at danger. And when I say your liver at danger, I mean your liver will go into full hepatic failure and you'll lose its ability to take the toxins out of your blood, and death is the next thing after that. So don't take this as candy as well. There are so many things to think about, even with Tylenol, and we think about them as doctors when we say, please take Tylenol. We don't just say, like, take Tylenol, take ibuprofen, no big deal, right? There are 1,000 things to think of, and that's why I went through 14 years of school to be able to talk to you about this today and treat many, many patients. And so politicians, whatever they say, do not have, even if they have your best interest in mind, even if they have their best interest in mind, they don't have the training, they don't have the ability to come and tell you what you should be taking or not. Please listen to your doctor. Please listen to your doctor and make a decision with them. Take the politics out of it.
Thanks, Dr. Tim. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up for today. Why don't our folks also listen to our doctor, tell them where they can find him and more about him?
Sure. Well, running for U.S. Congress here in District 9 in Southeast Indiana, ran last year and was the Democratic candidate. And this has always been a long race, a lot of work to get here. And we built a pretty great movement right now, 650 volunteers knocking on thousands of doors. And please join us at timpeckforcongress.com. I'm also here as the co-founder of Project Next Media, which we do a collaboration with Scott, and it is published on our platforms. And so Project Next is taking the fear and hate out of our society as much as possible by giving the facts and thinking about how to hear even more voices that are local and understand how all of these issues that we talk about sometimes on a higher level really affect people on a more local level. One of the shows that we have is the Dr. Tim Show tomorrow, actually setting up a show. It'll be at 5 o'clock, in which we're speaking with Dr. Carrie Rouse, who is the foremost OBGYN in Indiana for sure when it comes to issues surrounding those that bump up against policy and politics. She's really largely responsible for holding the state house in check and making sure that there were carve-outs in the very draconian abortion law that we have. At least there were some carve-outs that had some medical, logical necessities in there. So she'll be on tomorrow, along with one of her residents, who's a maternal fetal medicine resident, which is like advanced OBGYN kind of medicine, who did a huge report and research on Tylenol recently. So we have her coming on to support us. So that'll be at 5 o'clock tomorrow, and you can find that at any of our socials on Project Next Indiana, Project Next Media, including projectnextindiana.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Tim. And thank you for the platform. I appreciate having a place where we can have these conversations. Leslie, where can the good folks find you?
You can find me on my website, leslienuss.com. I am on Blue Sky, Nuss for Us. I'm on Facebook, Nuss for Us also. And I do have some videos on YouTube. You can just search under my name and they'll pop up. And my album it's going to come out November 7th, 11/7. It's a lucky number. So
Congratulations.
Awesome.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to that. Excellent. Finally, Jennifer David, last word goes to you.
Last word goes to me. You can find me on Facebook is where I do most of my stuff, and I've got links there. Jennifer David. There's also Jennifer David for Hoosiers. I also am the president and founder of the Kimberly Renee Foundation, which our focus is really about educating people about autism, female autism. I'm going to be doing a lot with that, and male autism as well. And I'm also very excited. I am expanding a disability lifestyle and resource magazine in Southern Indiana. It's going to be the Louisville area, and then Clark, Scott, Floyd, Washington, and Harrison counties. And that magazine is called Uniquely You. And this is going to be a great opportunity for me to share and talk about a lot of things that we've talked about today. So look forward to that.
Very good. Looking forward to seeing that too. Great. So, hey, thanks to all of you for joining me today. Thanks to Dr. Michael Schaefer too. He had to run, and Dr. Tim tagged in, so don't want to leave him hanging there. Anyway, until next week, I will look forward to seeing you then. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers. This has been Who's Left This Week. Love each other, Indiana.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.